o Dr. César Abogo, Country Manager do Banco Africano de Desenvolvimento. Online vai participar também a senhora Sheila Valdivia, do LSI. Bom, este encontro terá a duração de sensivelmente 60 minutos. Portanto, temos a indicação também de estarem presentes aqui representantes do setor público, do setor privado, representantes da academia, representantes dos parceiros de cooperação e representantes de outras organizações que ainda estão a chegar, não é? Portanto, ainda vão chegando. Sem mais delongas, vou pedir à senhora Ellen Patak, diretora da USAID de Moçambique, para proceder com as notas de boas-vindas. Por favor. Acho que é o único microfone.
Bom dia a todos. Bom dia mais uma vez. Excelente. Estimado Sr. Ângelo Nyalidede, Diretor Nacional Adjunto de Políticas Econômicas e de Desenvolvimento no Ministério da Economia e Finanças, caros colegas do Fundo Monetário Internacional e do Banco Africano de Desenvolvimento, distintos convidados, minhas senhoras e meus senhores. É com grande satisfação que estou aqui hoje para lançar o estudo do Diagnóstico de Crescimento de Moçambique. Este evento ocorre no contexto em que o país registra uma estabilidade macroeconômica traduzida por um crescimento do Produto Interno Bruto em 5% em 2023. No entanto, o país continua enfrentando desafios externos de várias índole que complicam a economia moçambicana de atingir o seu potencial, como a vulnerabilidade climática e as pressões sobre o financiamento ao desenvolvimento internacional devido a crises globais, torna necessário garantir uma utilização óptima dos recursos. Tendo em conta estas pressões e para identificar as soluções mais eficazes, uma análise baseada em pesquisa e estudos científicos são importantes para orientar a política econômica. Neste sentido, o Fundo Monetário Internacional, o Banco Africano de Desenvolvimento e o governo dos Estados Unidos, através da USAID, juntaram-se ao governo através do Ministério da Economia e das Finanças para compreender estes obstáculos que impedem o crescimento inclusivo do país e identificar as prioridades de reforma mais prementes. Realizada pela London School of Economics and Public Policy, o estudo identifica dois obstáculos fundamentais ao crescimento econômico. O primeiro é a falta das infraestruturas adequadas, especialmente estradas. O segundo é a burocracia e problemas em torno da boa governação da coisa pública. Estamos confiantes que uma investigação rigorosa e imparcial deste tipo pode informar e capacitar os decisores políticos para uma transformação estruturante no que concerne às prioridades para o desenvolvimento em Moçambique. Gostaria de agradecer a colaboração do Ministério da Economia e Finanças, particularmente do ministro Max Tonella e sua equipa, que dispensaram o seu tempo e conhecimento para a realização deste estudo. No nome do governo dos Estados Unidos, esperamos trabalhar em conjunto com o governo de Moçambique, parceiros internacionais e o setor privado para garantir que os resultados deste estudo sejam utilizados para melhorar a vida de todos os moçambicanos. Os Estados Unidos continuam empenhados em ajudar Moçambique a construir um país mais saudável, mais seguro, mais democrático e mais próspero para todos. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado, senhora Ellen, diretora da USAID. Dando seguimento à agenda, portanto, o segundo ponto deste encontro é de apresentação dos estudos, que será feito virtualmente pela representante do LSI, senhora Sheila, creio que já está conectada. Este encontro é bilingue, tanto em português e inglês. A Sheila, creio que vai apresentar em inglês. Temos tradução simultânea. Quem precisar é só levantar a mão. Vou pedir à equipe de apoio para partilhar, para fazer circular portanto, o equipamento. Portanto, para quem precisa de tradução simultânea, é só levantar a mão. Portanto, daquele lado também. Mas para não levarmos mais tempo, vou passar a palavra à Sheila. Sheila, can you introduce yourself? Then we go for the presentation.
Great. Yes, I hope that you can hear me. Thank you everyone for joining to this final presentation today. It's quite exciting to see how much progress this whole work that was made by a team composed of different economists, research assistants, managers, and policy officials in the LSE, in the London School of Economics, is getting to an end. I hope that the presentation today resonates quite a lot with the work that you have been doing from different sectors in the country. And I'm going to ask my friend Andrea to share the slides. I am expecting to have 3 main sections during the presentation. This is just a set of slides that come from a very long report, and I hope that if you feel that you want to go into deeper understanding and get many of the data analysis background that we have, you can get you can get a report and see more details from it. I'm happy to answer any of your questions after my presentation as well. And before I proceed to start, I would like to introduce myself. I am Sheila Enciso. I worked in the past for the Collab in the LSE as a policy official. And yes, I'm very excited and looking forward to your questions after my presentation. Can you see my slides? Hello?
Sorry about that. I am not able to share the screen.
Okay, please, if the technical team can help us with the slides, with the presentation.
Can you try again, Sheila?
Andrea, please.
Yes, just a moment, please.
Great. That seems to work well. So the agenda for today, I know that I only have 25 minutes, so I will try to go as fast as possible. The agenda today is first giving a background of how we saw the economy in the last decades. Then I will jump into what were the main findings from this analysis, what we call the binding constraints, to then proceed to a set of policy recommendations that encompass, we could tell them, strategies that intend to address what we found to be the main challenges. This is a set of ideas that we have collected from other experiences in the world, but that always deserve careful design and better thinking if they were to be applied in Mozambique. If we go to the next slide, please. So as you can see in this slide, we wanted to depict how the economy or how the real growth rate of the GDP had evolved in the last 4 decades. Mozambique came from a very complicated past before the end of the civil war. As you can see there, the green dots reflect which was the year growth rate, but then it managed to achieve more stable and sustained growth in the last decades. In the last years, however, this has been affected by different set of economic shocks. That is the reason behind why understanding what are the fundamentals or what are the spaces for reform that the country should undertake in order to fast speed and recover the growth rates that it had in the past. So having said that, as we are saying here in the slide, thanks to this post-war reconstruction, the market-oriented reforms, and the commodity super cycle, Mozambique managed to grow at around 4.7%, and this was almost double rate comparing other sub-Saharan African countries. Growth since then has been constrained by domestic and external shocks, and in this more or less favorable context, poverty increased from 48% in the estimates of the 2014 data of the Statistics Office to 62%. The problem is that poverty is the most acute in rural areas, particularly in the north and in the center of the country, and this creates a problem and exacerbates income inequality and increases this register that Mozambique has on how much unequal it is compared to other very unequal countries in the world. In this context, we believe that Mozambique's key challenge is converting its economic potential into inclusive growth, given the extension of poverty and high unequal rates. So improving or fostering inclusive growth for us is a key aspect to benefit most of the population. And this is of particular interest given that the population is still growing at relatively higher rates compared to other countries in the region. But this is precisely why we undertook this analysis, in order to understand what are these obstacles that are in the way. Mozambique is a quite heavily reliant country that still depends a lot on agriculture. A large proportion of the population works in this sector and depends and gets their main sources of income from agriculture, livestock, and fishing. But these sectors have a relatively lower productivity. If I can jump to the next slide, please, Andrea. And not only they have lower productivity, but they are also more vulnerable to climate change, right? So at the same time, these large flows of investment that the economy registered in the last years were mainly directed to capital-intensive export industries. And these didn't manage to translate into employment generation or relevant improvements in productivity. What we are showing here is comparing always Mozambique to similar peers in the region and the average of all sub-Saharan African countries, how total factor productivity progressed since the 80s. You could see that in the 80s, Mozambique was almost in the middle among all these countries. Then it started to improve after the civil war in the 90s. In the early 2000s, it was already losing track, but with this acceleration that it has been recorded in the last years, Mozambique is performing in the last of this ranking in terms of how productivity is or manages to improve, right? So all this context of how the growth that drove the economy, or the fundamentals of growth, didn't translate into more inclusive or channels of growth that can leverage employment, is, if we can jump to the next slide, Andrea, is what the reason why we started to deploy this growth diagnostics framework. This study generally starts by dividing which are the different reasons why investment is relatively lower, or the type of investment that a country needs is relatively lower, in the sense that it's not necessarily directed to more complex or diverse industries. We can split this between the levels of access to finance, and if it's not the issue to be related to limited access to finance, is how or which are how high are the returns to economic activity. Our study aimed at identifying which among all these set of options were the binding constraints, and once they were diagnosed, we would tell that there is a set of policy recommendations that deserve further attention by the government. The methodology basically consisted on a rigorous data analysis that collected mainly official sources from the government, but when this was not possible for data availability constraints or open or access constraints, we use complementary and existing empirical literature for the country. And we complemented this, and this is why we had a couple of fieldwork trips to meet stakeholders from different sectors, from most of them from the agriculture, from the extractives, and also sectors that would illuminate what we were finding with the data. Towards the end of my presentation, I will show that we met around 60 stakeholders, including also actors from the civil society and the public sector. And all this frequent iteration of the qualitative and quantitative data would allow us to come up with finding the challenges from bad infrastructure, specifically road, and the red tape to be the main aspects for policy action. And yeah, here I can see, or what we try to show is how we're linking the different binding constraints, or if it's easier to follow or to understand by immediate challenges, are how this connects with the main syndrome. We call it to be what is the government's capacity to provide public goods, and how this leads to the main problem of low levels of private investment and entrepreneurship in more complex and diverse areas. So our first finding is that the lack of infrastructure, specifically in roads, is impeding economic diversification in the country. And this is leading precisely to low levels of private investment. About 80% of the non-primary road network remains unpaved, and therefore, for all the primary, secondary, and tertiary roads, if it's not an issue of pavement, it's an issue of maintenance deficits. These problems raise transportation costs, and by doing so, the access to markets for farmers and firms that operate in different sectors becomes more complicated. This efficiency is restricting at the same time the connections between rural and urban areas, and this hinders the development of an integrated internal market. This is on the infrastructure side. On the red tape side, what we have is that it obstructs the business environment, and this creates or has a correlation with the high levels of informality in the country. Because of the high costs of doing businesses in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of days that the firms need to go through to register firms or to have access to licenses and operate. And as it would be expected, relatively speaking, Mozambique has a lower segment of middle-sized enterprises. This creates a pervasive loophole with feedback loop with other aspects that damage governance in the country, such as corruption, and weakens the space for the government coordinated action. This is an aspect that deserves further attention in the policy arena as well, because if there is a correlation on how the red tape fits informality, and at the same time this creates a space for corruption, this at the same time creates harder or more complicated an action plan by the government. So if something that I didn't mention when I was describing the growth diagnostics tree in terms of access to finance and levels of returns of investments, is that all this empirical analysis that we undertook is based on a comparative analysis. So we choose peer countries, we call them in the region, and we see if Mozambique performs substantially or underperforms substantially. And this can allow us to say, relatively speaking, this seems to be, or this does not seem to be, a particular problem in the country. So while I haven't mentioned yet in this basically summary of our findings what are not the binding constraints, I would like to briefly discuss why we found them not to be the immediate challenges, but it doesn't mean that from other angle, not necessarily following the growth diagnostics framework, they are in fact important for the country to attend. So regarding human capital, you will find more of this evidence in the report. We found that there is evidence that the returns to most levels of education have been falling over time. This, together with the fact that unemployment rates, especially for people with secondary education, is high. Few formal firms cite skilled workforce as a major constraint, and at the same time, few firms offer own training to compensate for potential insufficient public training. So all these pieces of evidence led us to think human capital doesn't mean to be an immediate challenge to harness or to leverage investment in the short or medium term. This doesn't mean, again, that the government should stop investing resources and attention and paying attention to human capital, but from a complexity side, how we see it is that once the economy manages to expand and diversify the number of sectors with higher levels of complexity, there is where higher levels of human capital will be crucial to provide the sufficient supply of labor that the firms need. This is on the human capital side. Similar is the case with access to finance. We do know that access to finance is indeed costly, but this high cost seems to be a consequence of the inefficiencies in the financial system. So to be more specific, what happens is that that Mozambique, as I was saying, has a very, very high cost of capital, but this is not responding to any excess or demand for credit. Credit rates are relatively average and have improved quite a lot in the last years. And this does not respond either to insufficient savings rate. The aggregate levels of domestic savings are somehow low, but
Hello, Sheila, you are breaking up, but I think you're almost at the end of your presentation. Sheila? Or Camila? But I think we're almost at the end of the presentation, e ela estava a apresentar as implicações de política, tanto com base nos findings deste estudo, enquanto estes são os desafios deste tipo de encontros híbridos, tanto é que alguns participam virtualmente. Mas enquanto resolvemos este problema, vamos precisar da Sheila tanto para a interação, para as respostas.
Hello.
Andrea, you can hear me, right?
We can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you well.
Can you wrap up in 2
I guess
minutes?
that Emilia just told me
Sheila?
that it's their network, so let's wait for them.
We can hear
that
you.
makes sense.
Hello? Sheila? Hello, Sheila?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
2 more
Hi.
minutes. Can you wrap up in 2 minutes?
Okay.
We want to
okay.
make sure that we have enough time for Q&As.
Yes. Okay. So just to summarize what I was saying, our findings are red tape and infrastructure, specifically in roads, are the main binding constraints or the immediate challenges to drive more investment into more complex and diversified sectors. And with this in mind, we had a different set of policy recommendations. If we can jump to the next slide, Andrea. We started by mapping how aligned to our diagnosis were the existing government plans. There is a set of plans that we are showing in the slides now, the PAE, the 5-year government plan, the Agenda 2025, and the National Development Strategy. All of them somehow acknowledged how, or the challenges that come from red tape and infrastructure in roads. And can we progress to the following slide, Andrea? And probably let's go to the next slide, to the next one. Yes, I guess that I'm gonna just very briefly summarize the points that I had thought to describe later, but you can see it in the presentation as well. These are the pillars that we believe that an action plan should have in the country: road investment, road infrastructure investment, actions like thinking of a delivery unit that can address this implementation of investment, prioritize which projects could be in the pipeline, which is the role that a private sector can have. At the same time, with the red tape, there is a lot of progress that have been doing in this regard, but thinking how decentralization of government services can further improve, which other aspects exist for a more business-friendly inspection system can exist, how effective and well-oriented the action plan in the short term should be, and this requires a lot of iteration with the private sector, and which other further aspects for digitalization exist as well to facilitate and make red tape or to reduce red tape. I haven't mentioned this. Again, you can see it in the presentation or in the report itself, but it's about the importance that fiscal space to attend these immediate challenges have. This creates the fiscal space to act whether on policies for red tape or for road infrastructure. And something that is part of this report as well is that you can see which are potential sectors in the economy that can diversify into. This comes from a statistical analysis that tries to see which are the existing capabilities of the economy, and therefore where are spaces for the economy to jump into. And if we go to the last slide, Andrea, this is the product space there. Yeah, in the next slide, in the table, there is a list of all these existing industries that have, again, a comparative advantage in the global market and where Mozambique can have the opportunity to jump into. And the second, or the table on the right shows is a list of non-existing but complex and feasible industries that Managui can grow, or that Mozambique can grow in the extensive margin. Sorry for that last rush, and sorry if I had problems with the connection, but I am happy to answer your questions now.
Thank you, Sheila, for your presentation. Peço uma salva de palmas para a Sheila, que não está aqui presencialmente, está aqui virtualmente. Muito obrigado, Sheila, pela apresentação. Foi uma apresentação corrida. Esta apresentação tem praticamente o triplo dos slides que ela aqui apresentou. Passo a repetição. O relatório é muito mais extensivo, muito mais detalhado que o que ela apresentou. Nós vamos partilhar com todos os participantes o link a partir do qual podem baixar o relatório, podem aceder aos slides. Pedimos a todos que, antes de saírem daqui, assinem a folha de presenças, foram a partilharem os vossos endereços eletrônicos e nós vamos enviar o respectivo link para o efeito. Mas algumas conclusões interessantes aqui deste estudo. Portanto, o estudo tinha como objetivo identificar aqueles que são os binding constraints, quer dizer, os constrangimentos que mais impedem, ou que são mais vinculativos ou mais sonantes para o crescimento econômico inclusivo. E o estudo conclui de forma muito breve, como a Sheila aqui partilhou, que infraestruturas praticamente, essencialmente rodoviárias, portanto, questões regulamentares, a coordenação interinstitucional e limitada capacidade de provisão de serviços como os binding constraints. Interessante é a conclusão do estudo de que, apesar do capital humano ser um grande déficit, tanto num país como Moçambique ou em Moçambique, não é propriamente um binding constraint, não é? O acesso ao financiamento também não há evidências, até pode ser, não há evidências de que seja. Portanto, vamos passar para a próxima fase de perguntas e respostas. Antes disso, vou pedir ao presídio, com a ajuda dos meus colegas, para passar por aqui para frente. Por favor, podem colocar aqui as cadeiras. Portanto, o Dr. Ângelo, o Alexis, o César e a Ellen e a Sheila, que já está também. Pode colocar a Sheila aí também à frente, Emília. Peço para colocar a Sheila também aqui à frente. Acredito que hajam muitas questões. Vou pedir que sejam muito breves, direto às questões. Nome e organização que representa e a vossa questão de forma muito, muito breve.
Me escuta? Sim? Ok. So, em inglês ou português? Então, vou fazer em português, então. O meu nome é Edo Stork, representante do PNUD. E a minha pergunta me estou a perguntar, primeiro, parabéns para o estudo, muito interessante. E me estou a perguntar o crescimento, taxa de crescimento da população. Que tipo de vocês encontraram alguma influência também para o crescimento econômico do país e que de alguma forma que existem certas recomendações. So I was wondering, I'm also seeing that a colleague from the London School, about the population growth that is quite high in the country and how that is sort of taken into the study. And the second thing I was wondering, and the last thing, is the Cabo Delgado, the conflict that is there. How is that also impacting economic growth in terms maybe of foreign direct investment or other types of consequences that can also influence the economic growth of the country? Thank you.
Obrigado. Se calhar levarmos mais duas questões ou questões de dois participantes. Faz favor.
Muito obrigado. Meu nome é Marcos Weima, da Embaixada Britânica. Eu vou perguntar em inglês para o benefício da nossa colega. Yeah. So I'll ask my question in English. So first of all, again, congratulations to all of you. It's an excellent report, very technical and sound, and I think a lot of actionable recommendations. But for me, there's one question that is quite pertinent, and that is a little bit going a step back. You know, who is the real driver, or what is the driver for inclusive development in Mozambique? Or just development, for that matter. What is the role of the state? What is the role of the private sector? What is the role of investors? What about provinces? Who does what? And I think if we drill down into that question, we can also ask the question, why is the regulation or the red tape as it is? Why is there red tape? Where are the incentives that align or don't align to get rid of it? So I think I would see that, I mean, you mentioned red tape, and I think there's a lot carried by that term, but I think it's worth unpacking. Thanks. Over.
Podemos levar mais uma, se existir. Faz favor.
Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. My question is about gender, whether you look into gender issues that can have an impact on inclusive growth.
Your name and...
Paula Vázquez from the European Union.
Thank you. Obrigado. Sheila, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you, Rosario. Very, very interesting questions. Many of them resonated in my mind, given that some prior meetings also commented on them. Probably I'm going to start with the last one and the disaggregated analysis by gender and also to the JAW. This framework, how it is designed, it doesn't get, let's say, it doesn't get that disaggregated, and therefore wouldn't allow us to think in very specific policy recommendations to improve gender equality or the access for the youth to employment. But what we do highlight is that there are certain aspects, for example, youth leading micro enterprises or becoming more entrepreneurs who would be indirectly benefited by the set of certain policy actions that we have formulated in this report. So this is how we, from this framework, would understand more inclusive growth in the country. Now, if I go back to the prior question of the main roots behind red tape, that's completely true. And we can certainly believe that this and say that this is a problem of a more political economy, aspect. But at the same time, this is why many of our, or a few of our policy recommendations emphasize aspects to continue digitalizing the economy. This can remove a lot of discretion in the decision making of the public entities, and at the same time, we believe that not only this channel of digitalization should be formalized, but at the same time there should be clear structures of coordination between the different agencies of the government. That is quite related to what the private sector can do. And similarly, we recommend that, but again, this is more a set of policy actions that the government should think harder and pay more attention. And it is how the participation of the private sector as well can be enhanced, and which are aspects in which there can be information that can be better collected. In the end, the private sector knows where are these aspects, for example, to improve specific red tapes or the specific areas where the provision of road infrastructure can start. So there are platforms, and we are advocating for spaces in which this coordination between the private sector and the public sector, and within the public sector, become more important. Going back to the question of the population growth, how indeed population growth has fed the economy in the last years, and Mozambique is continue to enjoying of a demographic bonus. How we see it is that the economy needs to grow faster in order to absorb the amount of people that are getting into the labor market. So this actually what does is putting more emphasis and demanding more active efforts from the government to be able to provide good quality jobs, and ideally in sectors that are more complex and that are more diverse, in a way that incomes of the workers that sort into these sectors can have for their households. I guess that we have 8 minutes, so probably we can go for more questions.
Thank you, Sheila. Por uma melhor gestão do tempo, vamos levar uma segunda ronda de questões e só no final vamos passar a palavra ao presídio. Mais questões aqui assim? Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Gama from Indonesian Embassy. We take note about the challenge that face the Mozambique to improve their economy, especially the red tape and infrastructure. But we also take note, and on your last presentation, that there are potential industries that can be developed. If there are only few, if we have to prioritize as analysts, if there are only 3 that you would choose, which sectors of industries that you would suggest? Thank you very much.
Mais alguma questão?
Many thanks to the team for putting this together. I think this has been very useful and it's food for thought, and I'm sure more detail in the report will be provided. Mine is just a comment on the human capital. And really, maybe this is to MEF, or, in terms of looking for the solutions. What would be the solutions to supporting the growth and the quality of the human capital? And does it align with some of the work that you are already doing in the development of your development plan around the TVETs? Recently, we had a request from the Ministry of Education and others around ensuring that the TVETs are supported to be able to respond to exactly that list of industries that you've put in. Is that something that is viable? Will it be something that government advocates for, not only for the public sector, but in the way forward with the private sector investments coming into country? Thank you.
Thank you. So your name again and institution?
Oh, sorry, Catherine Sozi, UN Resident Coordinator.
Hi, my name is Gianni Bardini. I am the Italian ambassador. I've been here 3 years. What surprises me is that there is so little Mozambican-made products. There is so little industrialization. And of course, you wonder why. And a paradox, I think, could be that it may, to a certain extent, this lack of private sector due to the abundance of natural resources. I mean, the abundance of natural resources generates enough wealth for the economic elite in this country. And it seems to me that there is little incentive to promote private economy and the private sector. So it may sound like a paradox, but it is my only explanation why Mozambique is not developing faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Ok, as últimas duas, três, mas foram muito direta questão para não nos alongarmos muito.
Okay, my name is Ryohei Shozaki from a Japanese embassy. Thank you very much for the presentation. And my question is about the demographic information, and also I think Mozambique have been facing a challenge of, for example, registration of a birth certificate and also giving ID, and to get demographic information. And I think it's going to be a basis of the whole governmental planning, especially, for example, like the infrastructural planning and also about the red tape related issues as well. So I'd like to ask about what do you think about the impact of lacking the demographic information in the civil legislation?
Atrás.
Hi, Felix Mambo, International Growth Center, LSE. So I just wanted to understand one point you mentioned. So my understanding is that essentially these are the constraints given the current government prioritizations and policies. And what I want to understand is if we're saying that the government should shift to these constraints, wouldn't this shift of constraints change, essentially change what the model would suggest are the new priorities? What I'm saying is, aren't these constraints only constraints given the current structure of the economy? And by changing the prioritization, we actually might have, for example, you mentioned education is not a constraint, but maybe that's because there's it's a priority now, and if we move away from that, it will become a constraint. Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question here, this side.
Bom dia. My name is Ana Frida Mungamba, and I'm a student of University Eduardo Mondlane, and I'm also representing Fórum Econômico Estudantil. And my question is, you were talking before about the private sector, the government, on their roles in inclusive economic growth. I would like to know what would be the role of the academics in all of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the last. Última pergunta.
Última pergunta.
Okay.
So, Alex Warren Rodriguez, senior economist with UNDP. More than a question, it's a bit of a reminder of previous discussions we had around this analysis, and it's the importance to link this to inclusive growth. It's not about going back to growth. Mozambique has decades of experience of growing very fast. That was mentioned at the beginning, but that didn't necessarily translate into poverty reduction, among other things. So it's a need to link all of these reforms, whether it's infrastructure, business environment, increasing productivity, to generating jobs for young people, to increasing incomes of farmers, to diversifying the economy. So it's not about inclusive growth, it's not about growth diagnostics, it's about inclusive growth diagnostics that we need to focus on. But thank you. It was just a comment.
Thank you. I mean, the aim of the study was actually to identify binding constraints to inclusive growth. That was so we're pretty much aligned on that. Sheila, apenas já não há mais questões. Se houver, podem também fazer por escrito. Portanto, pelos canais que nós vamos ainda partilhar. Sheila, portanto, vou passar a palavra a Sheila para responder algumas, ou o máximo possível que puder. E depois vou pedir ao presídio, se tiver algum comentário a tecer, começando pela Ellen, César, o Alexis e, por fim, o Dr. Nhalidede para as notas de encerramento. Sheila?
Thank you, Rosario. So I know that we don't... Can you hear me?
We can. Yes, we can.
Great. I know that we don't have too much time. I can take a few of the questions. The first one on the student representative point, it's quite true that academic research is generating evidence and employing data sets are available in the country are of extreme importance. This is actually a methodological challenge that we face because Mozambique, when compared to other countries, doesn't have too many data sources to be exploited, and therefore we had to rely on existing empirical literature. Or if this was the case, if the data existed, it was not always so easy to access them and therefore employ it for our study. So a very active set of researchers, young students who are interested in coming up with new evidence can always be useful. And whenever there are spaces to share findings and circulate these pieces of information, that's going to be useful for the whole community undoubtedly. The first question on which are 2-3 sectors in which the economy can jump into, I guess that I would be very unfair if I summarize it to 3-4. What I would say is that there is a list, as I was saying in the presentation, of between 39 and 52 sub-products that can be developed in the economy, that the methodology for finding each of them changes. So I would invite you to see which is the different set of sub-products in agriculture, in metals, and some of the minerals as well, and machinery. That's the second one that worth some comments from my side. And the third one on birth certificates also being quite delayed or unable to be provided. This is something that for the focus of this research project that focuses on firms and the productive activity, we don't manage to see, but that certainly if we think that Mozambique can have more digitalized systems, better coordinated services that are provided faster that reduces the fees for firms, or in this case households, that certainly creates an indirect impact and therefore can improve this specific problem of birth certificates. And on the inclusive growth, we believe as well that indirectly this can create aspects to promote and further employment and income generation for a wider proportion of the population, and therefore should be inclusive. But from methodologically from a more methodological aspect, I would be very fair if I say that we disaggregate this by gender, youth, and I would like just to emphasize that there are some limitations as well with this framework, but that is still there are some findings that we hope you find useful when you read the whole report.
Muito obrigado, Sheila. Como eu disse...
Sorry for taking 3 more minutes.
No, that's okay. Como eu disse, o relatório está disponível em português e em inglês. Pedimos a todos que assinem a folha de presenças para podermos partilhar, enviar para todos os participantes os links para o acesso ao mesmo. Portanto, não vou abrir mais para questões como tal. Antes do encerramento pelo Dr. Nhalidede, pedir ao presídio, se tiver alguma coisa a dizer.
Muito obrigada. Vou falar em inglês, mais fácil para mim. I just wanted to follow up on a few of the questions as well as I was noting them down. and maybe 3 points, and if my fellow panelists have anything else to add. I just want to, first on what Rosario was saying about the links and the data. It's like 200 pages of data, which will be in both, it's being translated to Portuguese, it started in English, but it's really rich in there, and especially as you look at the comparisons of the countries, and not just in Africa, but also in Africa, but also the case of Chile, which has a similar growth path in terms of how it had moved for its industries and its economic growth. So I really encourage you to look at that. I think there's a role for the academic sector in that as well, to look at the data there and then to track what is done, whether by the government, by development partners, and by private sector, to see how this is moving forward. In terms of inclusive development, it's the first question I asked as well when we first started this study together with the IMF and AFDB and MEF. But as Shayla already discussed, this is looking at broad economic growth in the country. So the idea there is that as broad economic growth comes to the country, including those, they showed us a map of the country and where the roads are. And it feels like we have a lot of roads in this country when you're in Maputo, or even when you're off the N1. But the second you look more in the interior of the country, there's nothing. So the idea is that there would be broader economic growth to rural areas if there were more streets and they were maintained. And then in turn, as development partners, private sector, government, shape their interventions, you can shape those with more inclusive development in mind in terms of looking at women, for example, in agriculture, which is a majority of actors, and other sort of inclusive, certainly youth. Youth are everywhere. So as we do our development approaches, I think we also look at those from the USAID perspective, and I'm sure others do as well. So I think the idea is broad economic growth will bring more opportunities, and we can help to shape those better as stakeholders in this process. And then my final comment is on the red tape and sort of where we go from here. I think one you saw in Shayla's presentation, it's looking at the National Development Plan, the NDE, which I know has already, some of these, this information and this research has been looked at as they are continuing to refine that and finalize the National Development Strategy. I think our hope is as well that a new administration of the government, as we enter into election year and beyond, will look at these results and will think of perhaps something like a PAI 2.0. So as you know, the package of acceleration, economic acceleration measures, the PAI, which has been implemented under President Nyusi. We're hopeful that in looking at those and seeing how we can look at red tape, what are the factors, that the informal sector here is enormous. And the reason why, one of the factors that they found, I know Shayla and the team looked at this, was that they can't enter the formal market because there's too much bureaucracy. There's too many entities in the government that need taxes or fees or applications and more applications and things like that, and that it's just a barrier to entering at all. And that will in turn help the government with public financial management and sort of income into the government. If more informal businesses were in the formal economy, but there needs to be better regulation such that it's not binding and restricting for them to enter that. So I think that's something that we hope a new programs and the new administration will carry forward into the next year or two and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Alexis or Cesar, if you have anything to say. If not...
Obrigado. Só uma nota, talvez, eu não vou entrar no estudo, mas eu acho que para complementar, o motivo, a motivação para que nos uniu aqui para fazer esse trabalho, esse estudo, é a convicção da importância de pensar, de ter esse pensamento e fazer essa análise de dados, essa análise científica, que possa informar essa discussão. Então, muitas vezes em economia ou em desenvolvimento, há uma discussão muito ampla, há uma cacofonia, na verdade, de opiniões, mas é muito importante para nortear as estratégias de desenvolvimento, tanto dos parceiros como do governo. É muito, muito importante que esse trabalho de base seja feito, que possa, digamos, reduzir o espectro das atividades. Então, eu acho que isso o trabalho mostrou, e como a Ellen disse, a quantidade de dados é muito grande. O Félix mencionou os binding constraints, os constrangimentos específicos mencionados aqui, eles são mencionados aqui, mas eles vão mudar à medida que o país evolve. Então, é importante a academia, os jovens que estão na universidade, incorporarem esse pensamento de que o país precisa constantemente pensar sobre o seu futuro e nortear as estratégias de desenvolvimento baseado em dados e não em opiniões. Então, muitas vezes temos opiniões que percorrem por aí, mas que não são fundamentadas. Então, esse tipo de trabalho eu acho muito importante. Vou terminar por aqui. Eu passo a palavra para o César agora.
Well, I think Helen and Alexis have said it all, but I would like to add a couple of things and reflecting on what Alex mentioned and also Ambassador Bardini. In the business in which we are, African Development Bank, USAID, and IMF, and of course the government of Mozambique, which is development, there are a couple of things that we need to take into consideration. We talk about the resources that we bring to boost inclusive growth. We talk about our ability to engage relevant actors in policy dialogue, and we talk about knowledge. In the language I speak, and also Paula and Alex, we have a say that goes like this: El camino hacia el infierno está lleno de buenas intenciones. In English, I guess it's something like the road to hell is paved with good intention. I think there's something like that in Portuguese and I guess in Sangana. The question is that this is an incomplete phrase. It's not only paved with wrong or good intention, but there are good intentions that can be based on wrong assumptions, wrong ideas. So what we are bringing with this study is really an innovative way for Mozambique government, private sector, development partner to think about the imperative for inclusive growth. If we put ourselves in an idealistic Rawlsian universe, nobody wants inequality. Nobody enjoys with inequality. It's not something that, I guess I don't want it, they don't want it, but it happens. We see countries growing and the growth is not translated to inclusive growth. Mozambique is a very good example of that. And what we really hope with this study is to provide an element that can refine the level of discussion. The London School of Economics, they have used this Harvard Growth Lab approach. I was once Minister of Finance, Economy and Planning in my own country. And after I was dismissed, I took a sabbatical year and I attended leading economic growth at the Harvard University and also the implementing public policies. And literally, I don't want to make myself a victim, but I can say that I revisited most of the assumptions. Revisiting the assumption that we used to shape public policies is not something new. Today, we are debating the Washington Consensus, and it was very well, there were a set of ideas that today they are debated. So we think that the Harvard Growth Lab methodology that London School of Economics has used in this study will really provide Mozambicans and development partners with an innovative approach that can avoid us seeing in the scenarios that we have growth and that growth is not translated into equality or gains for the poor ones. So this is what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. Peço uma salva de palmas para as questões foram colocadas e as respostas foram apresentadas. Como disse, este encontro não é de esgotamento. Portanto, vão continuar a existir questões, vão haver respostas. O MEF, de certeza, portanto, estará aberto para interação e o relatório estará disponível no site do MEF. Para terminar, vou convidar o Dr. Nyalided para proferir as palavras de encerramento, as considerações finais de encerramento.
Bom dia e muito obrigado. E, bem, primeiro gostaria de agradecer aos nossos parceiros que permitiram que esse estudo fosse realizado, representados por aqui pelo Alex do FMI, a Helen da USAID e o César do Banco Africano de Desenvolvimento. Bem, E também em meu nome e em nome do MEF, agradecer a presença de todos que estão neste evento. Bem, primeiro ia começar por dizer que o MEF, naquilo que é a estrutura de governação de Moçambique, é a instituição que tem como uma das suas atribuições coordenar a elaboração de políticas e estratégias de desenvolvimento. E que com a aprovação da lei do SISTAF 14/2020, ela já traz aqui a obrigatoriedade de que as estratégias têm que serem feitas na base em evidências, tem que se socorrer de estudos para além de também terem que se consultar outros documentos que já existem, assim como fazerem-se consultas públicas. Então, mais uma vez, agradecer esse estudo, que é exatamente um instrumento que precisamos para poder olhar para a elaboração das políticas e estratégias, bem como a sua implementação. De referir que esse estudo foi elaborado nesta fase que estamos a fazer a revisão da nossa Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento. A Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento é um instrumento de planificação que irá orientar todos os outros instrumentos de planificação. Ele tem um horizonte de 20 anos, temos as estratégias setoriais que têm tido um período de 10 anos, temos também outros instrumentos de implementação. Estamos a falar dos planos quinquenais do governo, cenário fiscal de médio prazo, assim como o plano econômico, social e orçamento do Estado, que serão exatamente os instrumentos para a execução das estratégias e das políticas. As questões aqui levantadas pelo estudo são questões que foram tidas em contas no processo da elaboração da estratégia. Se olharmos para aquilo que é a nossa estratégia de desenvolvimento, tem lá um pilar que é desenvolvimento do capital humano e social, tem lá também um pilar que tem a ver com as infraestruturas e ordenamento territorial, para além de outros pilares que lá podemos encontrar, porque temos exatamente a consciência de que são fatores, efetivamente, que atrasam aquilo que é o nosso desenvolvimento. Temos os campos de produção, é necessário ligar esses campos de produção com os mercados de consumo e também para poder dinamizar aquilo que é o crescimento da indústria. A indústria tem que ser instalada num sítio onde há energia, há vias de comunicação. Então, são questões pertinentes para o desenvolvimento do país. E, tendo dito isso, muito obrigado e que estamos a usar o estudo aqui feito para influenciar a elaboração das nossas políticas e estratégias de desenvolvimento. Bom dia.
Muito obrigado. Acho que faltou dizer que com estas palavras damos por encerrado. Muito obrigado a todos pela presença. Bom dia. Espero que todos tenham partilhado o endereço eletrônico, o e-mail, tenham assinado a folha de presenças, para podermos partilhar o estudo.